Welcome to Baker Makes It. I am Zach Baker, and in this video we're continuing the work on our 1972 Holiday Rambler travel trailer. We've been working on this thing for years, and in this video we're going to be digging into the plumbing and getting that ready to roll. We're trying to take this thing camping for July 4th, and this is the last major system that has to happen. We're going to be boondocking here, so we're not going to have hookups or anything like that, so the plumbing has to work. We're only going to really be using it for toilet and washing our hands. We're not going to be cooking or anything like that because we'll be staying at a nearby family's house for all of those sorts of things. But we do need the toilet to work, and we're just going to try to get everything up and running while we're at it. We've got a couple things we got to do here. We got to do our drain plumbing. We have to get our sinks to our gray tank. We have to get our toilet to our black tank. And then we have to do all the supply lines. The tanks are already installed in this thing. I did that a couple years ago, and I had mocked up a valve assembly to make sure we could dump them, and that all looked like it's going to work. So we got to make it permanent now. We also have to drill holes through the floor, which is going to be a little delicate, but we got to get our sink drains down through the floor. We got to connect our shower. And the way I've designed this, there are some compromises. I'm aware of that, and I'll show you some of those as we go. So before we dig into this, I've got a recap video. Check out all of the steps that we've taken to get this thing to where it is today. All right, we're in the camper and we're looking under the kitchen sink here. This is going to be our replacement for the trap. This is called a HEPVO valve, and I discovered these when I was looking at how to run vents and traps and things. The beauty of this system is you do not need to run a vent through the ceiling. That was what convinced me to use these. These things run, I think, about $35 a piece, and then I had to get an ABS adapter as well. But to not have to run all the stuff up through the roof, these are actually going to be cheaper. Plus it's less stuff going through the roof, less holes. I don't have to have some sort of cabinet or something to hide the roof vent. And the reason you don't need that is because this essentially allows the sink to act as its own air admittance valve. There is I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but there is a silicone gasket in there. And it's shaped like this. As the water runs through, it opens up, and then it goes back to its original position where it's closed. Let's see if you can, yeah, so this is the downstream side. You can see how it comes to a point there, and as water goes through, that will open up and allow it to go through. It says it'll allow small food scraps to pass through. And the beauty of this is there's no standing water. It is supposed to prevent odors from coming up out of the tank in the same way that a trap would. But you don't have the common issue of driving the RV, causing the water in the trap to slosh, allowing gases up that make your whole camper smell like your tank. So nobody likes that. It also is just very simple. It's just a straight shot right out of the drain, and we'll go down through the floor. Now we're going to have to do some angles here in our pipe to clear the frame underneath, but I drilled a couple test holes in here and in the bathroom just to make sure we're good, and we are. So the next step here is going to be to take all of the sink strainers out and we're going to silicone them to the sink that they're going in so that we have a final location of where this is going to go. Once we have that, we'll reattach our HEPFO valves, and we'll drill our holes, and we'll start running our pipe down through the floor and getting it back to the tank. We want to get all that in before we stain our countertops. We're going to take our countertops off later and stain them, but I want to make sure the plumbing is set up so I know 100% that we're good to go before I take this all apart. Now, because this is a vessel sink, there's not a great way to attach this, so you can see it's just sitting here in this hole. And so what I did, since this thing's going to be driving down the road, is I plasma cut 2 circles out of 16 gauge aluminum. I didn't have anything thicker, so I just tacked the edges together. We're going to put that on here, and then I bought another sink strainer from the same company just to get this nut. And we're going to use this nut to pinch this onto the countertop. That'll hold this in place, and then it won't go anywhere when we're driving down the road. So now that the drains are through the floor, we need to start working on the plumbing underneath the floor. I'm now at the back of the camper. So this is our 2 tanks here. We've got our gray tank is closer to me, and our black tank is on the far side. And we need to start getting this plumbed in. Now, the reason I'm doing this before finishing what we just started is because it's a lot harder to figure out exactly what fittings I need here. And I want to find out as soon as possible if I need to order more, because you can't just go to the store and buy these. So I had mocked up the 3-inch line from the black tank years ago to make sure I had roughly what I needed, and that seems to be mostly good. I'm going to make a few adjustments, and I'm going to go through with a silver Sharpie, and I'm going to make index marks on each of those lines. Now, as this sits right now, this valve here is sticking out pretty far. It's behind the tire directly, but I do know as I assemble this, the fittings are going to go further into each other, and that's going to pull this whole thing in probably 1 inch or 2. We'll see when we get here, but we can always trim this last piece of pipe a little bit shorter to accommodate that. Once we have that figured out, what we'll be doing is we'll be plumbing this 1.5 inch line to the gray tank, and that will finish it for back here. We'll have to add a couple straps to hold all the weight of this, but that is the main goal here, is to get all this glued together and get it strapped up, and then it'll be a little easier to figure out what fittings we need for the front part to finish our sink and shower drains. And if I need to order more, I can do that ASAP. So I'm gonna hop under here, make a few adjustments, get everything marked, take it apart, and we'll start gluing. All right, we've got our valve in. We have our 1.5 inch plumbing going up to the gray tank. We've got the 3-inch going over to the black tank. We put these little pipe supports on, and this thing is feeling rock solid now. So I think this is good. We're gonna move on to the rest of the drain plumbing. Now that the tank valves are installed, the last major thing we have to do under here is install the drains to the tanks. So we've got 2 entrances to the tanks and 3 drains to get there. So let me show you a rough idea of what we're looking at here, and then we'll get this done. I don't know how well you can see this, but there's a pipe coming down over there. That's our kitchen one. And I've got just these 2 pipes just mocked up right now. They go into the 2 valves on the 2 inlets rather on our gray tank. And so those are super long right now, but I just wanted to set them up in there. So looking over to our passenger side, we've got our bathroom sink coming in right there. And then right above me is the shower with this HEPFO valve. So we're going to combine these 2. We're going to Y them together and go into this closer pipe. And then that further pipe is just going to be probably like a 90 and a 45 to get into the kitchen one. So it's really tight down here. It's very hard to show what's going on, but I'll throw a time lapse on here and hopefully you can see a little bit of what's happening. The other thing we need to do down here, these little white things are tank flushes. So we're gonna have to connect some threaded fittings to some PEX, run them up and into the inside of the trailer. So we'll have valves up there that'll allow us to flush these tanks. I'm not gonna lie to you all, yesterday about broke me out there. It is super hot here in Tennessee now. The heat indexes were like in the mid 90s yesterday. I was dealing with the crawling around on rocks, the fumes from the glue, and then drain plumbing is just a frustrating experience in general if you don't do it all the time. Maybe even if you do, but I don't do it all the time. So I feel okay about what we got accomplished. Everything's connected. I'm a little skeptical about the connections into the tank. I read probably a year plus after I put those holes in the tank that sort of rubber connection really shouldn't be used below the water line. It should only be used on the tops of the tanks. I didn't know that, so I'm not sure if those are going to leak. One of them started spinning when I was pushing the pipe in and twisting it, and that means the seal broke on the inside. So my hope is that as the pipe is forced into the fitting, it pushes it out and it seals it into the side. If not, then we'll have to come up with something else at a later time. That's going to be a pretty big problem if those don't work. So we're not going to stress about that right now. We know we at least have half the tank capacity, worst case. So we're going to move forward. We still have a little bit more to do underneath. I have to put some hangers on those pipes so they're not shaking all around when we're driving. And then the other thing we need to do is put these Mopica tank sensors on the bottom. These are sonar sensors. I think they first came out with a propane one. I have one of those too. It has magnets on the bottom. It clips onto the bottom of a steel propane tank. But if you're going to use it for something like a poly tank, like what we've got, they give you these neat little mounting rings, and the mounting ring just has VHB tape on the back of it, and they give you a little primer stick to prime the plastic. Put the sensor in there and you stick it to the bottom. And all you have to know is how thick your tank is. And then we're going to pair that to these Mopica LCD displays. I tested this with one on propane and also on my diesel tank. Diesel tank's getting some weird readings right now, but I think it's because the fuel sender is still in there, so I may need to take that out at some point when the tank level is a little bit lower. Can't really do that right now. So in the meantime, we've got two of these stick-on ones for our black and gray tanks, and then I also purchased a hardwire one for the fresh tank. Now, the hardwire one, you have to drill a hole in the tank, and you do it on the top. Because my fresh tank is sitting on the floor in here, there wasn't a great way to do one of these underneath sensors, and then I want to change the battery in this. They say the battery lasts at least a couple of years in the others. They'll be pretty easy to get to, so I'm not too stressed. Same with these displays. A couple of years it says, so we're going to go ahead and put these on today as well, and then we'll be able to monitor how full our tanks are. All right, we're under the black tank here. We're going to go ahead and get this plastic ring that holds our tank sensor installed. And I got to back it off a little bit to find a totally flat spot here. But I've got one. I'm going to go ahead and just mark it quick with a pencil. The reason I'm going to do that is because they provide this little tube of primer that is specifically for the plastic tanks here. So it looks like we have to break this. So we're just going to apply this primer to the plastic, and then we're going to peel off our VHB backing here. This 3M VHB tape. This is, I believe, stands for Very High Bond. Really creative naming here. We're going to stick this roughly on our mark so it hits the primer there, and I'm going to hold this, just put some pressure on it for maybe 30 seconds here. Okay, and I'm going to take my sensor here, and there's a little rubber circle in here that you take this, they call it sonic grease, very fancy, and they say to put about a pea-sized glob on there. So there's our glob of sonic grease, and now we're going to push this in here and snap our collar on. All right, tank sensor installed. I need to verify how many gallons this tank holds, and then I'm also going to measure the height from where this is installed to the top so we can get an accurate reading of how full this thing is. I'll show you guys the rest of underneath a little bit later. It is incredibly hot today and the heat is absolutely killing me. But I think all the drain plumbing is done at this point. I got some strapping on the rest of the pipes. Wasn't totally ideal. I just had to use some roll strapping and just screw it to the floor in spots, screw it to the framing and others, but everything is secure. So we're back into the air conditioning. It's not very cool in here. It's 80 right now with the AC blowing full blast, but I will take it over the alternative. So we're on to our supply lines now. There's a few things we're going to do before we actually start running PEX here, and I'll probably wait to describe exactly how the system works until we have a little bit of it together. But what we're going to work on first is this tank right now is attached with a ratchet strap over the top, side to side. There's not really much keeping it from going forward other than that strap. This is a 30-gallon tank. Water is 8 pounds a gallon. That's 240 pounds. If this thing's full and we have an accident or slam on the brakes, that's a lot of weight trying to come forward. So we're going to take some aluminum angle and screw it to the floor on the front and the back, and that will get this a little more secured. Once we do that, we're going to go ahead and drill a hole in the top of this tank and mount our tank sensor on here. And we'll probably run the wires later because they need to go underneath all this. But or we could run it to, I lied, we're going to run it to the accessory panel, which will be right here. So that'll be easy. And so we'll do that. And then we got to figure out how to vacuum out the inside of this tank. There is some debris from when we poked the holes for the incoming and outgoing lines, and I was not able to get it out before. So I want to see if we can tape a hose onto a vacuum, stick it in there, get the rest of that crap out, and then we can start running our lines. Here we are looking at the connections to our tank here. We've got our incoming line with a drain valve and then a valve that feeds our water pump here. And so we did that with a little strainer here to make sure that catches anything in the tank. And then it comes on the other side of the pump. There's a backflow valve here that's going to prevent the city water from backflowing into the tank and filling it. The blue line that comes up there comes up to our water hookup. And when the pump is not on, we can pressurize it with the hose and go to our manifold. This is our hot manifold that we've hooked up. So you can see we've got the incoming line on the bottom right here. And then these two lines are going to go out to our bathroom. These are for the shower and the sink. And then this other line up top will go back to our sprayer. In the bathroom here, we've got our two lines coming in, one for the faucet there, and then this longer one goes up to our shower. We connected that with some threaded fittings there. And then up here at our water heater, we've got the outgoing line from the water heater comes down to a T, and that just goes up to our sink. I just couldn't see running this all the way to the back just to come back forward again. So this sink will get hot water the fastest, but we've got a little valve here that'll get hooked up to our sink, and we're looking pretty good on the hot side. So next step is to run our cold water lines. We're going to start just by running all of these long lines into the bathroom here. Just make sure we've got enough length. And once we do that, we'll start working on our toilet here. So the toilet is kind of in an awkward spot. So I wanted to crimp that first. And then I came in and had to look at some instructions to make sure I was doing this right. But we got the flange and the gasket on, and we got this thing mounted. With the toilet down, we can focus on the rest of our water hookups here. So get these valves on the sink hookups in the bathroom and just keep on going from there. I kept going on this last night, but I was just exhausted. The heat's taken it out of me, and I just wanted to keep going and not worry about getting the camera set up. So it was just more of the same, more cutting, more crimping, more running lines. We are almost done with this. We're almost ready to pressurize. In fact, we could pressurize right now. However, we still need to do the tank flushes underneath, which I think are going to be a bit of a pain. So let me show you what we've got, and then we'll hop under there and see if we can get those in. So we wrap this up front here. We've got two cold lines coming up. One goes to the supply for the hot water heater. The other is a direct line around to our faucet, and we have a hot that follows that along. As I said before, this hot connects directly into this hot water heater because I just couldn't see running one back just to run one forward again. So we're all set there. These are all nice and tight. I put swivels on all of these so that these could be disconnected to service. I also put a big hose clamp on here and up here just to kind of keep all this from shaking around too much. So just like the wiring, this is going to follow back through the bench here to our manifolds, and this is where the real work got done last night. This was a huge pain trying to get in here, especially to crimp those back there. My arms are super sore. We're over 100 crimp rings at this point, but those are in. Hot water is underneath it. So we've got those two going up front. We've got three headed towards the bathroom, and we have one along with the hot headed back to our sprayer that'll be out back. So all of this is wrapped up. We've got our water can either come in from the tank, and we've got a valve for the tank. We also have a tank drain over here to a swivel fitting into our strainer, through our pump, another swivel fitting. We've got our backflow valve back there, or we can run our city water. So if we have nothing in the tank and we pressurize the city water, this backflow valve should keep it from running backwards into the tank and overflowing it. So we can pressurize either way, with a hose or with our pump and our tank. All these colds are connected to our manifold, and the only ones I haven't shown you are these that run this way with a couple more hots. We've got our toilet set up there, and our others run all the way down there. And they're going to come into our bathroom here. And this worked out pretty nice. I didn't have to use a lot of fittings here. I was able to just bend it around that big wide corner, hose clamp to some valves for the sink faucet, and then two continue up and over to our shower and up to our shower head. I have a pipe in there with a cap on it right now, just so I can pressurize this line and make sure that it holds. Finally, we got our toilet in. Back here, we've got just a PEX stub out with a male threaded fitting, and we have our toilet water line. It was a bit of a tight fit side to side. That was tighter than I meant for it to be, but that should work. This toilet is they call it a residence, so it's supposed to be like tall, like a regular toilet. You go halfway on the pedal to fill it up with water, and the rest to flush. So a little bit of sawdust in here, but we've got a straight shot down into our black tank, so hopefully that will work well. So now down in here, we have to make some cuts and drill through the floor for our tank flushes. The reason I did tank flushes is I've heard horror stories of people having to shove hoses up there to try to clean out, especially toilet paper and just, solidified waste up there. We'll leave it at that. But when I was researching tanks and all this stuff, I discovered these tank flushes. You just drill a hole in the side, you screw it on with some sealant, and then you can hook it up to a garden hose fitting. So what we're going to do is run a garden hose fitting to PEX. We're going to use a backflow valve on each one. It's the last thing we want is that water going the other way and going back into our water system. And then we'll have a valve for each tank that'll be in this bench here. Navigating the PEX and being able to get the crimper in and all that is going to be a little tricky here, so I got to think this through. In one way or another, we got to figure out how to get in there and crimp these suckers on, so it's going to be a challenge. Okay, we're back underneath. I told you guys I'd show you some of the strapping. I literally just had to use pipe strap for a bunch of this because it was so tight. And that one goes into the bottom of the floor, which I don't love, as does that one. but it was really the only way I could figure it out. There's no metal here. I tried to run one. You can see a hole here. I tried to run one here, and it just wasn't doing anything. So that's where we're at. We'll keep an eye on it. So looking at the back of our tanks, there's our black tank flush. I have a garden hose fitting that adapts to 1/2-inch PEX. I just kind of loosely threaded that in, and same for our gray tank. So they're going to go over and go up in that little wheel well bench. I've also got these little backflow valves, if it'll focus, there it goes. And these do have a flow direction. You can see there's an arrow in there. So those will get put in there as well. So I need to drill an exploratory hole up in there. I'm going to have my wife hold the pipes so I don't drill a pipe or a wire. Okay, quick update. Everything has been turned on at this point. We found a couple issues. We've got the sprayers in the back were leaking where the threaded fittings were. And then we've got, what am I trying to say? Oh, the hot water heater is the, hang on, I'm hearing water splashing behind me. Let me just see what that sound is. Okay, just the sound of it coming in through the inlet. It makes a weird sound. The hot water heater is cracked internally. I can see where some copper split, like it had fluid in it, and it froze and cracked. I have never put fluid in this, so I'm really frustrated. It's a Furrion tankless unit. These things are not cheap. It's over 600 bucks. I've had it for like 4 years though. I bought it a long time ago because I needed to figure out how I was going to put all that together. So I don't think there's any way they're going to warranty that. Based on what I've read online, it's some bad experiences. Anyway, so I ordered a new one. We're going to try to get that in. What I'm doing right now is filling up the gray tank, and I'll fill up the black tank after. I'm watching on my Mopica gauge. That seems to be working pretty well. We're at 61% right now. I have the tank flush running, just dumping in there right now. All the water lines, the supply lines seem to be good. I haven't found a single leak. Faucets all work. I pressurized the shower with the test plug in. That worked. So good news is that we don't have any major water spraying anywhere. We're gonna fill these tanks up to see is the tank outlet leaking once it gets up over that halfway mark. I also want to see when it's near the top like that, are we going to have any issues with it coming into the shower drain? So little by little, we're going to fill this up. The other great news is that these tanks are full enough now that the valves in the back would be leaking if there's an issue, and they don't seem to be at all. All of the fittings look completely dry. So fingers crossed that keeps up. I'm going to keep playing with this, and I'll come back and check in a little bit here. We temporarily wired up the water pump. I don't have a switch for it up front yet, but I just tied the ends together, connected it back here. Let's turn this pressure on. You probably can't even hear that. It is incredibly quiet. We're not getting any leaks on either side of the pump, so that's great. This is supposed to run until it hits 45 psi and then kick off. We'll let this run a sec here. I don't know if it's how long that takes normally. Well, let's go test it out and see if it's working. Like that. Ooh. Not building an awful lot of pressure. Oh, there comes some more. Wonder if we just needed the pump to prime. I'm thinking that's the case here. Yeah, we had some air in the line. That's running really good. And as soon as I turned that off, the pump shut off. So that's great. Let's try this one. Okay, pump just kicked on again. That's great. So every time I turn on the water, that pump's kicking on, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. Let's test the toilet here. Whoa! Holy cow. I'm not really sure what happened there. Wow. I think my valve is stuck. Yeah. Maybe. Now it stopped. Wow, I think that valve is stuck. Glad I checked that. That was nearly overflowed. You can hear the pump kicking on. That's perfect. I'm seeing some water trickling after I lit off. Now, Seems to be okay now. Wow, we're gonna have to keep an eye on that. That's a little scary. Good news is that this is showing 75%, and I would say that is about right there. So our sensors are working. So overall, we've got some wins and we've got some losses here. As expected, the tank, the gray tank inlet is an issue. When it gets about half full, it starts dribbling out. It's a very slow leak. If we were, camping on our own property, it wouldn't bother me at all. It's just a drip, and it's the gray tank, not the black tank. So that's great. I don't know if there's a solution to be had there. Like I said earlier in the video, I realized that, I think I said this, I realized online after reading that those types of fittings should only be used on top of the tank. Now I know that. I didn't know that before. The other downside there is, in order to try to do anything with that, I probably have to cut PVC and try to reseal. So for right now, I'm not going to stress about it. If we were camping, we could always use like I think it's called a honey wagon, a little plastic portable tote to drain that and dump it elsewhere as needed. Black tank works good. Everything seems to be working fine there. A couple odd quirks when I ran the tank flushes with the tank closed. I don't know if there was so much pressure generated that the air couldn't get out the vent at the top, but it caused my HEPFO valves to flip inside out, and then they didn't want to work. I had to take them apart and push them back in. I have no clue what's going on there. I have a combined drain stack or vent stack to both. I wonder if maybe my sensors hadn't caught up, and maybe the one tank was full. It also might have been why the toilet was full. Like that tank may have completely filled up to the point that it filled up the vent stack and it was preventing air from getting out. I think that's probably pretty likely. There's definitely a delay time on those sensors, and normally you're not just nonstop dumping water in there, so they have more time to react. But in any case, I think all in all, this went pretty well. I'm really bummed about the hot water heater. I've ordered a new one. It is what it is. I don't know what else I can do. So we'll swap that out and we'll move on. I'm happy that the pressure tank seems to work really well, or the water tank rather, with the pressure system. It seems to work when it's plugged in. So all in all, we have a functioning system here, and more importantly, the toilet works. And driving and having that as a resource would be great. We'll probably throw 5 gallons of water in the tank when we go to drive, so we have that as needed. New hot water heater is here. Got here quicker than I thought, so we're going to go ahead and swap this out in this video. I am still just very frustrated about this. It's been a few days and I just have not been able to figure out how I could have possibly caused this. I really think this was a defective unit from Furrion, but I also don't think they're going to take it back as long as I've had it. So unfortunately, we're going to have to cut some caulk, take the access panel off, and we're going to have to pull the unit out. We'll have to put butyl tape on the new one, screw it back on, and recaulk it. So this is going to be a bit of a process, but let's get this thing in, and we're gonna unpack this first and just look it over and make sure there's no visible damage, and then we'll go from there. Well, that wasn't so bad after all, and that's going to wrap up our plumbing adventure. That thing was a quick in and out. The caulking was the hardest part. I had to cut the old, put some new on. I didn't strip all the old off because I didn't want to scratch the paint, but everything seems like it's sealed up well. So the last thing we have to check is the hot water heater actually functioning, but I need my propane lines hooked up to do that. So we're going to tackle that in a future video. But for now, I would say this is a successful adventure on our plumbing. The one thing that is not quite how I want it is the fact that the gray tank leaks when it's about half full. It's just a trickle. It is what it is. It's a pretty big tank. So for right now, we're not going to do anything about it. I'm going to look into if there's a better way to do that. I could potentially replace the tank and have spin fittings put on, but I'd have to drop the whole tank and measure exactly where I have all my fittings now. I possibly would have to take out the black tank. There's a lot that would have to happen there. So I want to think about that. I want to explore my options before I dig into that. So all in all, I would say this was successful. We're ready to take this thing camping on the plumbing side. Now we're going to get into test driving this in the next video. There's going to be a lot of little odds and ends, some interior stuff that has to get finished up, some hitch cutting and welding. we've got to put a new weight distributing hitch on, and we need to check all of our bearings and our brakes and make sure everything's good. And we have to weigh it. So a ton more to do. That's going to be the next video. If you're not yet, make sure you subscribe to Baker Makes It so you can see this thing finally hitting the road.